Thank you so much.
That was, yeah, I mean, we premiered this at Toronto to like 2,000 people. We were in LA for like 1,000 people at the Grauman's Chinese Theater, and yet this is absolutely the best audience. Like, film is alive in Chicago. This is beautiful. Thank you for coming.
I think the first question is kind of obvious. Why do you hate Jesus so much? Okay. I mean, if you want to answer, you can. But no, it's not. This is not a film that's an attack on religion. I don't think. But it is a question. It is a film that questions faith. Why do you believe in something that you can't see? Why do you believe in something when you know it's derivative of other things? I think there's a quote. Actually, I think it's the very first conversation where the girls were talking about condoms, and one of them said something about, well, what else do we believe because of marketing? And I'm like, oh, that's the movie. And so tell me, because I know you've been working on this. You've been working on the script for a long time. Where did it come from? But more importantly, what was the point you were trying to make by telling this story?
Scott, why do you hate Jesus?
You were first. No, I think this movie really evolved from knowing each other since we were 11 years old, and
Catholic school, by the way.
Presbyterian.
Vague Christians,
Vague Christian. What's that?
Yeah, and just kind of growing up and Presbyterian.
Yeah, Presbyterian, and like going to church every Sunday and getting to a point where you like take it for granted almost. And there was a moment, I think I was like 14, and it just was a moment of like introspection where I'm like, why am I believing the things that I believe? And in addition to that, like as we grew up, like we both married into families that had different religious beliefs and systems. Our friendship circle, ranged from having a ton of atheist friends to having a ton of believers that were on different religious paths.
We have a Scientologist friend. One.
Just one. And so we had a fascination with that, running parallel with the fascination of cults. Going from like the Jonestown Massacre to Keith Raniere of the Nexium cult, and people that essentially are marketing geniuses to a certain degree in terms of how they pull people together and slowly change people's thought processes.
Yeah, and we always thought it would be really fun to do a movie about religion, a movie that's a conversation about religion. There are not very many movies like that. When we were in middle school, we saw Robert Zemeckis' Contact, and even as like young kids, we thought, wow, like what an adult conversation about religion, and packaged in a popcorn movie, and so it's kind of been a dream of ours but we really had nothing to say about religion until we got a little older.
And I think like your second question. Yeah, it's not, to us, it's not an attack on religion or being non-religious. It's more, if anything, an attack on certainty and feeling like you know the one truth that nobody else knows. Because we're all searching for it. Like our life is always searching for the things that we can't smell, taste, touch, etc.
I think that's the thing that this really hit home for me, was that it's not that someone is religious or believes in something, it's that they're so sure that their version of it is the right version. Yeah. That's the thing that keeps me away from organized religion. So it reminds me, there's a I think it's interesting, this film that's out now, or maybe it's not out anymore, Saturday Night, it talks about George Carlin. George Carlin was the host of the first SNL, and he did a routine in that, which isn't in the movie, but because it's not about the show itself, but he did a routine about where he says something about religion is like a lift in your shoe, and if you need it to help you walk straight, that's great, but don't make me wear your shoes, and don't force your shoes on other, don't be a shoe salesman, and that's kind of what missionaries are, kind of shoes. To add yet another metaphor to the film, it's filled with metaphors. Let's talk about some of the metaphors. Games, specifically Monopoly, music, fast food. These are much easier ways to embrace some of the ideas you're trying to get across. How did you sort of settle on those? And the whole thing is a game, being a puzzle. But talk about sort of landing on those.
It kind of came from an organic place. We started writing the script 10 years ago, and we got to the scene where the missionaries sit down with Mr. Reed, and Mr. Reed starts talking, and we're like, oh no, like we're not fluent in Mr. Reed's language. We don't know enough about, he's this, genius level IQ. He studied all the religions. We hadn't yet. So my phone just fell out. That was God. And so we needed to take a few years to kind of fill our brains with some knowledge, read the Quran because we hadn't read the Quran, read the Book of Mormon, read some interesting atheist thinkers like Richard Dawkins and Christopher Hitchens. George Carlin was an influence on this movie in a weird way, Bo Burnham, like different kind of comedic thinkers. I guess what I'm trying to say is 10 years later, about 2 years ago, when we actually started writing the script in full, we were now able to put religious topics into terms we could understand, like fast food, which is, Scott and I are experts on fast food, sadly. And so it was
Portillo's is the best one.
He's not even pandering. When we lived in LA, they have a Portillo's like an hour outside of LA, and like we used to drive just to go to Portillo's.
It was 2 hours in rush hour traffic. It was so worth it.
Religious-based horror is not a new thing, but I'm wondering how did you? I don't think I've ever seen it approached like this, and I'm wondering, you're not using the iconography against these people. I'm wondering how did you want to do it differently? Yeah, that's the question. How did you want to approach it differently? Because it's maybe been done to death in a certain way.
I think it wasn't approaching it like thinking of horror tropes. It's more thinking about how everybody is going to see family or friends at Thanksgiving, and we just had an election, so good luck with that, those conversations. That's how we felt about religion growing up in Iowa, that it was a taboo subject that you could not talk about. And so the horror was, am I going to lose like my relationship with like my family member or my friend by bringing this up? Like it felt like a relatable enough topic. And so I think the intersection of working in the thriller genre that we've done a couple of times, it felt right for kind of injecting the scariness of like telling, hey dad, I'm an atheist or something, and he's a staunch Catholic, like feeling that tension all of a sudden rise to the surface, and then trying to imbue that tension inside each scene where you don't know, am I in a dangerous situation, or is this guy just a little crazy and he's British and it's just a difference in cultures?
Hard to tell the difference, I know.
I think one thing that the guys mentioned in their intro, which relates to that question, is the challenge of, can ideas be the thing that scare and create the tension and the fear? Not necessarily monsters, ideas alone. I was raised Mormon, and I heard about this idea from the guys over 10 years ago. Obviously, I was intrigued because I was raised Mormon. But what I really appreciated about the script was that even though there was a very specific entry point into the conversations, it's broader than even just religion. It's like we were talking about belief, disbelief. And the section that always got me in the script, and certainly in the film, is when he starts talking about simulation theory. I mean, that's broader than religion. So just the ideas, so can ideas scare you? And I think that was a really exciting challenge for the film.
Well, the idea of weaponizing words is always intriguing. But the other thing you weaponize is Hugh Grant. And he is literally, I say this knowing it sounds ridiculous, but I don't think I can't imagine anyone else playing this role as effectively because of the baggage that he brings with him, the charm, we grew like decades of thinking he was like one of the kings of rom-coms, and the fact that you use that against us is wonderful. Was he always the guy for you, or was was he always the guy? Was he the first choice?
I wish we could say he was. He was a first choice once we started talking about it, but what I mean by that is we didn't write the script with Hugh Grant in mind. We wrote the script thinking that the role was like a 10 out of 10 difficulty, and so we were like, oh no, like we have to get Daniel Day-Lewis out of retirement or else we're screwed. Like, that was like kind of like our anxiety about casting. And then you do the thing that you always do. So with the the studio and the producers, you put lists together of actors that you love, and we just kept coming back to Hugh. It was like there were some flashy names, but like Hugh Grant. Could it be Hugh Grant? Should he be British? Like we kept like kind of debating it amongst ourselves, and we basically got to the point where we felt like it has to be Hugh. Like it can't be anybody else. Both because of his charm, we're able to weaponize the relationship that he has with an audience. We trust him, we love him. But also because I feel, our feeling is that in the past 10 years, for us starting with Cloud Atlas, he's kind of proved to be one of our great character actors in cinema history, who just role after role, challenging himself. He's a freaking Oompa Loompa in Wonka. Why do you do that? You do that because you want a challenge and you're a crazy person. And you need to
It's Paddington's greatest adversary. Yeah. Julie, you said you were raised Mormon. Chloe and Sophie also raised. Is that what did I hear that too?
There are a handful of us. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did that have anything to do? I was going to say, did that have anything to do with you selecting them? Is there knowledge?
You would think so, but we're not that smart or conniving. We were auditioned. We just auditioned, like as you do on any film, and they kept coming to the forefront of our minds. There was something so genuine, authentic about how they were embodying these two sister missionaries, and it was like the last audition that our casting director let it slip, like, oh, by the way, they have a Mormon background, and it was great that she kept that information from us so that we were making the best artistic decision, but then layering that authenticity into it helped really anchor, all the authenticity that we needed to, and they were still surrounded by friends that were in missions and such, so they could go to their friends and ask them questions and really educate everybody to make sure that we were doing our best to try and hit this mark of authenticity.
One of the wonderful experiences I had watching this film was that there was a certain point, probably around the halfway mark, where I'm just thinking, isn't this supposed to be a horror film? When is that? I mean, I didn't care that it hadn't gone that way yet. I was completely enraptured in the conversation, and then suddenly you're in it without even realizing you're in it. And I can't pinpoint the place where it happens, but it's so subtle and it's so, it might have something to do with the basement doors, I don't know, but it's somewhere in there that it happens, but it's very gradual. It's, the frog in the boiling water scenario. Was that deliberate? Was that a hard thing to kind of find in terms of like the timing?
That's interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know that we talk too much about genre. We do like the unexpected tension of just cordial conversation, and that feels like a horror film to us. But we do have, like, Scott and I, here's something to know about Scott and I. Our taste runs from lowbrow to highbrow, okay? So we like it all. So sometimes our movies manifest in these kind of like, is this an art film think piece about religion, or is this just like a B movie, like grindhouse horror film? Like, hopefully it's like kind of intersecting both, and I don't know what to say. It's just we like all different types of movies.
I also think, like, we just thinking about like religion, you can talk about it in theory, but then you're always like, there's part of us that's always like, oh, is there something supernatural out there that we can like prove? And the back half of that film leans into that, where there's some of you might have been watching and being like, oh, like, is this actually going to go like supernatural? And one thing that we really lean into, and maybe it's to our own undoing, is playing with the idea of the anticlimax, and that the movie might build up and then all of a sudden subvert like your expectations, and that might be disappointing, but maybe that says something about one's relationship to faith.
It's funny, that leads into my next question actually, was this idea of the supernatural, that the scene where we're waiting to see if the prophet is going to come back to life. If you think about it, these girls who, any Christian-based religion should get excited about that moment. And of course, they're terrified that Jesus, or like, that Jesus is a zombie.
Yeah, we shot it chronologically, pretty much for the most part. I mean, there were some like set piece kind of tension things that we had to like do out of order just based on the set build. But we did as much in order as possible for the actors. Our job, we felt like on this movie as filmmakers, it was all about servicing the three performers. So, you know, aesthetically, we were going for this kind of thematic concept of controls. We wanted every single shot in the movie to have intentionality and to feel deliberate in terms of the storytelling, almost Hitchcockian in that way. And yet, counter to that, we wanted to have the actors have all the freedom in the world and not worry about, oh, the camera has to like push in on their face and wrap around and hit them on this line. And so we worked quite extensively with our cinematographer, Chung Hoon, who is the DP of Old Boy and Last Night in Soho and Eight and all these amazing things. Wonderful human being and brilliant cinematographer. And so we worked together to kind of plot out the strategy of our camera moves, but we every set was kind of caked with what's called dance floor, so that there wasn't any dolly track that the actors could trip over. And we did our damnedest. It was tricky, but did our damnedest to make the film feel like it had intentionality with the visuals, and yet it's all about what crazy shit is Hugh gonna